Okay, well, good evening, everybody. We're here to talk to Angus Hudson about the Ridley Road, which we've just seen the first 2 episodes of. So I'd like to start by welcoming Angus, giving you a little background about him, unless you'd like to do it yourself. I'm going to do it. So Angus started in the film business in the modern commercials in the early 80s. And had become an established feature film focus pillar by the early 90s, working with some not very well-known DPs like Roger Deakins, Oliver Stapleton, Dennis Crosnan, and John Mattison. He started lighting full-time in 1997 and got his break in the world of commercials and music videos. He stayed in the orbit of John Mattison, however, who gave Angus second unit work on a number of his films from that period, including Plunkett and McLean, Trauma, and Stoned. Angus's first film, Harry Om, came in 2003, and since then he's amassed a diverse range of credits, including 2 films with director Sean Ellis, Cashback and The Broken, The Hippopotamus with Stephen Fry in 2016, The Life Ahead, starring Sophia Loren in 2020, and the upcoming Netflix movie, I Used to Be Famous, among many others. And this show is Angus's first television job, remarkably. Is that right?
Yeah.
What took you
And
so long?
you've all seen it in the cinema, which is rather cool. Yeah.
So, I hugely enjoyed the show. I think the subject matter is fascinating. Yeah. So I wondered if you wanted to tell us a little bit about how you responded when you were first sent the scripts and what your first kind of thoughts visually were about how you wanted to create this world.
I mean, when I first got the script, I was rather amazed that anybody actually sent me a TV script. There seems to be a bit of a, for a lot of people, seems to be a bit of a leap to go from, for people who have a background in commercials or background in film to get into TV, and somehow some people just feel it's a bit of a jump. And so I was quite excited to get a TV thing. And then when I read it, I actually thought, my gosh, it's rather a good TV thing. And I was put into the mix for it by a cinematographer friend of mine, Stephen Murphy, who was a great friend of the director, Lisa Mulcahy, and he wasn't available to do it, so he put me in. And Lisa was really excited. She wanted to shoot it on film, and it was all amazing, and we were going to make it really 60s-ish. And then COVID happened, and we got shut down, and then we didn't shoot it on film. But we took it forwards with a film-like mindset. And we took some of those original ideas. We had lots of time to sort of, whilst we were locked down, basically the job was in pre-production in sort of February 2020, and I jumped on at the end of February, and 3 weeks later we were shut down. But within that time, I think we had a very intense bit of prep before we got shut down, and really explored the subject matter. We were going to shoot in. We had to shoot in Manchester for London. It was a very short but intense period, and I think I'm straying away from your original questions. What excited
That's okay.
What excited me about it? I mean, what really excited me about it was that it was a really good script. It really, really was, and and all the actors were signed up for it. Eddie Marzan was going to be in, and as you read it, you could feel it, the passion. It felt very important. It felt like a really important story, and there's huge parallels. I mean, a lot of the lines they pull, which sound rather, they're just.
Well, the speech about you being anti. I mean, It's a great speech, but it does sound very current.
But actually.
Yeah.
From what I understand, those were the lines of the time. So it's a thing. It's actually, we're borrowing it from the 1960s.
Yeah.
Not we.
So I thought the use of that archive footage was very effective in kind of, selling your 60s world. How early on was that stuff kind of in the mix as a technique?
when I started looking around Manchester, I started to realise that anywhere you pointed a camera in Manchester, you saw a building site and you saw a tower block. And it became more and more evident that we couldn't, I mean, it wasn't huge, it was sort of a mid-budget TV show, and we weren't going to have a lot of VFX budget to sort of get rid of buildings and create streets that weren't there and stuff that wasn't there. And it just seemed quite obvious just to pull archive stuff up to really set the scene. It's a bit like, when you're reading a novel, you get a little chapter marker, a little illustration at the beginning of a new chapter that paints a picture of what's about to come. And I've always liked that in a lot of the projects I've done, is that especially when there's lots of people talking a lot, you need to actually set them in that world. And I found, and in this instance, we couldn't set them in that world
enough.
Big
enough scale. Yeah.
We didn't have the money to set them in that world. So Lisa and I came up with the idea of using archive footage, and I started really sort of ramping it up and saying, oh, we could use it here and we could use it here. And it doesn't matter, we can intercut it. We can intercut it with our stuff that we shot on our camera, and what I'll do is I'll get a Bolex, and then we'll shoot our sets which tie in the real archive footage of Soho into our sets in Manchester. So and what was really interesting was that I got somebody to point the Bolex, and I never, the way things are, you don't always get to see your rushes, especially when they come in a bit late and then you're onto something else. When it was cut in, I couldn't quite tell what were my rushes and what were original stuff and I mean, there was some, of course, but there's other ones like the Striptease Club. I said, oh, I don't remember.
Don't remember doing that.
I did, and because I wasn't.
And I mean, I love the sort of Kodachrome-y kind of very poppy colour in that.
Yeah.
I mean, did you regrade those quite heavily, or was that really?
Well, we kind of graded the footage we got from the archive people. Some of it was, we had a great colorist, Gary Curran, who has an eye. He grew up on film. He knows what film should look like. And there's a few liberties taken in terms of sort of our perception of what film should look like.
Yeah.
But there's nothing like a bit of grain to sort of drag you back. And we shot on sort of 500 T 16mm. As I said, it was on a Bolex, and I couldn't see through it. The few times I picked it up, I couldn't see through it because you can't see through Bolexes. Right. And so that's why those shots are so static, because you'd have to look through, take the stop off, put the stop back on, hold it still, and hope that nothing had changed. And so again, but I think it was a really effective way. And there's a scene in one of my favourite bits is there's that Trafalgar Square sequence where we shoot her on our modern camera coming in, arriving, and as we follow her through the crowd, there's a guy with a little sort of Super 8 16mm sort of camera pointing it at her and therefore at us, kind of. Then we cut to his footage, which he was shooting on 16mm of her coming through the crowd, and it's almost like sort of, I'm sure there's a term for it, but that I really quite like that sort of the fun of that little thing of her appearing in the 16mm archive footage. And then we use
sort of bedding it into the
and
real
then
archive stuff you've got. Yeah.
By the time we got to shooting that Trafalgar Square sequence, I'd packed up the Bolex and we moved on to an Arten as a camera could actually look through, and then it's intercut throughout all the fighting, and then we return to it a few times throughout the film in certain places, and in later episodes, which you must all watch when you get home on the BBC iPlayer in UHD and all that sort of stuff, you'll see more archive footage. So you've got that to look forward to.
Just coming back though to the kind of discussions that you had about actually shooting the project on film, do you remember like how much more was it cost that was the issue, or was it shooting ratio? So I'm always interested, with some TV shows that I've been involved with and some that I've heard about, the economy of scale seems to be that like beyond a certain point, like once you've got a long enough shoot, it doesn't really make much difference cost-wise, because the storage of the UHD material versus the process in the film?
I mean, the costs. I mean, funnily enough, I mean there were a few battles. The main battle was that the BBC aren't in love with film.
Yeah, well, that's a different thing. Yeah.
And so we had production were totally behind us, really, really behind us. And our producer, Betsam Morris-Evans, you know, she and I and Lisa sat down and wrote these documents to sell it to the BBC. And Small Axe had just come out, and Shabir Krishna had done an amazing job shooting film on all his episodes. And I called up Shabir and said, "How did you convince them to do it?" I said, "I don't know. Steve McQueen did it." And he said, "Oh, we'll take it somewhere else if you don't do it on film." So they did it on film. And so we thought, we'll try that one, and that didn't work. And then we kept on pushing, and it felt like it was going in that direction, and they were softening.
And this would have been to do it on 16, or on...
And it would have been to do it on 16. Right. And Lisa was really keen to have that visceral 16mm thing going on. And the more we actually prepped it, I started to realise that actually I wasn't quite sure whether 16mm was the right medium for this, because we had quite a bit of night, and it means more lights, and I was going to have to light it, and the production company had never shot on film before, and I could just see them going a bit, "Oh God, why does he need big lights?" And big lights need more people, and the way I wanted to light it was... I mean, people aren't used to having to shoot on film, especially in the world of TV, where everybody's been very comfortable with 2,500 ISO and sensitive sensors, and seeing into the dark, and a little box of Asteras. Yeah. And I didn't want to do that with this, and so it would have... Anyway, a day before we got shut down, it was announced that we would not be shooting on film. And then COVID happened. And then it gave us this pause to actually reconsider and think, and how can we bring that film element through, and that approach. And originally the show was going to be 2 cameras. And with COVID, the budget changed, and we went down to 1 camera, and it was originally going to be 2 directors, and then it turned into 1 director, and everything tightened up, and in a way, I think we ended up on the right medium for this. It allowed me to craft it a bit more. I tried to use a lot of the techniques that I'd grown up with in terms of filmy techniques. I worked with Gary Curran, the colorist, to develop a LUT that sort of lent into the world of film a bit, a slightly contemporary 60s vibe, Bridge of Spies, Revolutionary Road, a bit of that cyan coming through. And it's not a true film look, but it's sort of kind of my memory, my rather dodgy memory of what I think film might have looked like if I'd invented it.
And lighting-wise, did you approach it in a sort of fairly traditional manner?
Yeah. I mean, lights coming through windows tended to be big lights coming through windows. I use quite a lot of tungsten. Even in daylight, I use tungsten. I quite like that. I would tend to sort of try and get as big a lamp as I could possibly get through a window, and then enhance a little bit with sort of LED stuff inside.
And were they letting you use smoke at that point, or was it still a sort of favoured no?
Yeah, I mean, there was an argument that smoke spread COVID, and then smoke didn't spread COVID, and then
they didn't seem
COVID
to
spread
decide
smoke,
on that
and
one.
it was sort of that rather. It was all a bit of a muddle, and then actually it was the location manager that scuppered me most of the time. "Oh no, they won't let you use smoke in here," and then my sort of pragmatic side said, "We can't afford to have a special effects person here to manage the smoke. So it's going to be somebody who's not interested managing the smoke. And then levels are going to go up and down, and then I'm going to sit in the grade and go, oh, the levels are all up and down." And I just thought, there's a handful of places we used it, and that was bad enough. And if I'd used it throughout, I would have torn my hair out in the grade. So I think this has happened quite a few times in my life, where I've chosen not to have smoke just purely for pragmatic
So as not to have a
avoiding
heart attack.
pain in the arse reasons.
Anything else that you...
We went in to make it very filmic, and I think the way the shots are constructed, the use of a lot of Steadicam, a lot of developing shots, and I'm thrilled that, you know, Lisa, the director, and the editor managed to actually, they kept a lot of our intent of when we blocked out stuff. And Lisa was, you know, she was great. And I think it looks like a film.
What's her background? Where does she come from?
She was an AD for 20 years.
Right.
We made our days.
Okay.
God, I mean, with me on there, having an AD, nice rather fluid approach to things. Oh, that'll be fine. And Lisa there cracking the whip. We don't have time for that. Oh, but we need it. No, you don't. I'm editing it. You're not.
Because it can go two ways. Sometimes you get first ADs that become directors and they just don't give a shit about time anymore.
Well,
They're
no,
like,
she really. I mean, I felt slightly sorry for Simon, the AD.
Right. Okay.
Who
Well, he was being micromanaged.
We should be here now. So, but she was great. I mean, actually, no, Lisa. You know, it kind of wouldn't have happened. I mean, you know, it's easy to say it wouldn't have happened without her, but really she was great and made some very pragmatic decisions, ones that sort of I could learn from in terms of conciseness. No, we've got that, but can't we? No. Just one more, please.
Yes, because it didn't feel like there was tons of coverage in those.
There wasn't. We had a lot of freedom, and you know, we did a lot of prep. We knew what we wanted to do. We knew the story we were telling, and I have my rather fluid approach to things that I don't like to shot list excessively unless it requires it. I like to see how actors are going to use the space. I like to see what happens on the day a little bit. I know where my light's going to be coming through the windows. I know how. I kind of got a feel. I know kind of the story approach we're taking. So you'll notice there's a lot of 180s in there. So I like to see a whole set, bring somebody in through a room, bring them round, come in and follow up, as sort of developing master shots, and then let's see what kind of coverage we need. Let's see how the actors rise to the occasion. It's sort of the sort of stuff that ADs hate and directors kind of go, oh God. But with Lisa being quite strict.
But actors
quite like, unless you tell them to hit the light. Why? Don't tell me what to do. Oh, it would be lovely to see you in this shot. Just one step forwards. Okay. And you know, we developed a lot again with Gary over a period. Probably one of the good things is we developed our look for the film during this sort of extended prep due to lockdown, and we would chat once a week and look at pictures together, and it was such a rare, special treat to just be able to sit and natter and send each other little sort of pictures, say, oh, this is nice, oh, yeah. And then we would sort of grade some footage he had knocking around and say, oh, and then look at films, again, all remotely. Gary was in Dublin and I was not. And then we shot some tests and he graded some tests, and then a few days before the shoot, I actually got Aggie, our lead actress, on sets with wigs and makeup and wardrobe, and we shot some more tests and we applied the LUT we'd built earlier on, and it kind of worked. He did some tweaks.
So you had one that you used for everything?
It was just a single show LUT for the whole thing. We talked about doing everything else, but for me it's a bit like a ground glass. You get used to it.
Yeah.
And then we had, when we were shooting, we had... we didn't do live grade. I think it was too busy a show to do live grade, so we just had on-set grading. So we just at the end of the, you know, as we downloaded LUTs, I would peer around the Dick Keir Loy's monitors, and he would say, Angus, Chris, what about this? And I'd say, yeah. And sort of within a few weeks, he stopped grabbing me, and at the end of the day, we'd quickly look at stuff, and he would normally be wrapped 15 minutes after main wrap. And he was brilliant, and he created a very consistent look. And this is so close to what we did, but much enhanced by Gary. I mean, it sort of, the intention was good, and that was great because it got us through, you know, I think the production company and the producers and the execs, they're very keen, they like to see faces, and I was very keen to give them what they wanted.
Yeah, they're fairly conventional in their taste, Red.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think it's that thing where you're talking about light and colour with people who it's not their first language, and you're trying to learn you're really trying to listen about what they want. And I think we managed here to see faces and also create quite a lot of mood around it as well, I think.
And were you using the Venice just in its kind of regular configuration, or did you do anything?
So we were on the Sony Venice. We had two of them. One kind of lived on the Steadicam, and then we also had a Rialto, so it had that sort of umbilical thing. And there's a couple of scenes we played around it on the Rialto, but I kind of felt it looked weird. It's sort of this weird kind of, it moved in a weird way. And when I looked at it, it just didn't feel right. I can't tell you what it was about it, but it was the way the camera moved. Rather than sort of being cradled like this, and you had this movement, it sort of was a bit more...
It's too small.
It just sort of... And when it's sitting on a shoulder, there's a way somebody moves when the camera's on a shoulder. And there's a way a camera moves when it's on a Steadicam. There's a way a camera moves when it's on a dolly. And there's a way a camera moves in a hat when it's sort of... You can operate with your wrists. And I can't tell you exactly what it is, but it's something that didn't go back into my sort of... my long-term memory of what films should look like. Or this film should look like.
And Steadicam rather than Ronin or any other...
Again, it's sort of old-fashioned, old wobbly me. I grew up as a Steadicam focus puller. I grew up understanding how Steadicam works and the craft of sort of how it should pull back and how you can follow. And I just like it. And I like an operator with a good eye, and Rob Hart has a great eye. And I didn't operate on this at all. So, apart from the Bolex, which I didn't like. And
why did you decide not to? Why?
Why would you? If somebody else can do it for you. I mean,
agree.
I don't do Steadicam. I don't want to do. I loved operating, but the last few films, I have had last 4 things I've had operators in, and I realise I think they can do it better than I can do it. And I get to look and ponder and say, oh, interesting. And next time, can you just do this a bit? And they're just better at it, and it allows me to light.
Yeah, well, you can watch what's happening in the shot rather than worrying.
And then I sit with my DIT and my gaffer, and we go, that's really nice. Or, God. And then it just allows me to step back a bit and look at it with a bit of distance.
And how was the schedule on this? How long did you have for each episode?
Oh, God, I don't know. What's your average TV thing?
13 to 15 days, I would have thought.
Something like that.
Yeah.
We were doing about 6 pages a day-ish.
Well, which is quite a lot.
Yeah, I mean 5 to 6 pages a day, sometimes a bit more. I think it was so weird because the schedule, we got a little bit extra because of COVID, and then we got shut down twice, and it was a very stressful shoot, not because of what we were doing and not because of relationships, not because of anything. It was stressful because nobody had tried in COVID. We were early back and we didn't know the protocols. Every day we could get shut down.
So what were they doing COVID-wise? were they? Did you have remote heads so there were not people on set?
No, because I was saying, and we were also sort of being a bit stick in the mud. No,
Right.
we've got to get the camera in there. And one of the things, it's from Vivian's point of view, everything, we've got to be with her. So, poor old Rob had to
Wear a mask
and be sort of, at the time, visors, and then we got rid of the visors. And it was just those early days where sort of nobody knew what anything was happening. And everybody was getting grumpy because it was hot and
Tiring.
and then it got cold and wet and Manchestery, and bloody buildings were in shot that shouldn't be in shot, and we didn't have earpieces, and then the batteries didn't work. It was just sort of, and everything, it was the sort of the straw that broke the camel's back, and snap, snap, grump, grump. Ugh. And then we got shut down for 2 weeks, and everybody went, oh, thank God for that. And we all caught our breath, and when we came back, it was so much better. We just needed to be shut down, and life got better. We caught our breath.
Good. Does anybody out there have any questions? Yep.
I wanted to ask, did you have to sacrifice in terms of the shots and lens choices for the shots? Then you thought you couldn't VFX the windows, the buildings out and stuff like that?
Not so much sacrifice lens choices. I mean, one of the interesting things that we had to take into mind is that we had a 16:9 delivery on this. So, and I was adamant that I didn't want to do an extraction from within the 235, and I battled hard for 235. I battled hard for 239, but the BBC, we didn't like 239, so we got just a tiny bit less. We got 235, expecting to end up at 2:1, but we got 235, which was great, and we came up with an older way of I took the Sony Venice sensor is 17:9. We had a 235 extraction with the 235 at the very top of the frame. So it was, and then we took the 16:9 out of the 17:9. So actually, when the 17:9 is there, we added. When you look at the 17.
So is it common top line is what you're
We have a common top line, but the 16:9 version has more at the bottom and only a tiny bit off the edge. And it was really good. And rather than having this pan and scan thing which would have taken days and compromised everything, and I would have got all uppity about how can we have two people in the same shot talking, and it really was a brilliant way. Anybody wants to know about it, I'll tell you about it another time, because I need pictures to do this. But it was really good. But really, to answer your question, stuff we couldn't see, we just had to frame out. And some of the stuff we didn't, we had a bit of a VFX budget. But essentially, we just tried very hard not to see stuff we weren't allowed to see. And you make it work as best you can. Does that answer a bit of it?
Okay. Anybody else? Yep.
Hi, Angus. My question would be, because you're talking about COVID and shooting in COVID and stuff, for you personally, as a cinematographer, did you find that you, I suppose the word I'd say, would kind of suffer creatively in yourself in any way? Did you struggle because you kind of weren't in, like, constant contact with people and stuff like that? How did it go for you?
I was miserable and depressed. The creativity rose from it. I don't know. I mean, I was in Manchester. I live in London. I was in an apartment. Everybody went home to their families. I got a bit low. But don't they say something about you have to suffer for your art? But I think, I wouldn't. The situation made it stressy. The people were great. The actors were great. Lisa, the director, and I got on really well. I mean, my team was amazing. But nevertheless, it was stressful. And I think it's a tense show. It really is, and maybe some of that sort of flavoured. Maybe that was one of the ingredients that flavoured the tension. And again, it's interesting watching it on the big screen here because it feels much pacier when you watch it on TV. Here, as I said, I was getting quite itchy feet, especially an hour and a half in. I was saying, oh, come on, hurry up. But on, that whole COVID thing did create tension a bit on set. As I said, we were about to, every day we could get shut down. Producers, everybody was uptight. People had older parents, and it was early days when COVID was, we all know what it was like. But I don't know, does that at all?
No, it does answer it, yeah. But I was just wondering if creatively you felt that it might have affected you in any way, or it was just fine?
Well, creatively, I don't know. I think when you start shooting, you don't think you start. The creative bit happens in prep. The creative bit happens when you build your LUT, when you make your lens choices, when you choose your camera, when you play around with what works here, when you work out with your operators that visual language. And then when you're shooting, the creativity I think you're talking about turns into creativity of how do we make our day? How do we finish on time? We did 1 hour's overtime in 14 weeks. That's where the creativity came in. How do we stop people getting grumpy? It becomes a logistical, and that's the role of the cinematographer so often is when you're shooting, it's about just making your day. Very profound.
Okay, I think we had another question down here.
As someone who's been working in commercials, film and television, what would you say would be like, if you're moving from film to television, what's the biggest difference?
I think there's a mindset, there's a big difference in mindset around film and television. And I think people, funny enough, not so much around cinematographers, but around directors and around production. And I think in the UK there's a bit of a culture, there's a TV culture that comes from TV maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago, a mindset. And I think when coming from a film background where you come in with a slightly different headspace, and I did quite big budget stuffs in a second unit role, but as a main unit DP, I did sort of lower budget stuff. And so coming in, the schedules were actually tighter on films. We had to do more with films, but I think a lot of production people in television sometimes don't think that people coming from film can work to a TV schedule. And because TV schedules, especially the mid-level ones, are 6 or 7 or 8 pages a day, and there's sort of this, people they just don't think you can do it. And also, where I think, as I say, one of the big things is just getting the scripts, being offered it. You get judged on, they look at your CV and they said, oh, he did second unit on Star Wars, and he did The Hippopotamus, which was, Tuppence Halfpenny, and he did this and he did that. And how does that fit into my silent witness world? Oh, he can't work to our schedules. And it's sort of, you stick to what you know, I think, a little bit. And so it's not so much as an individual. I came in and I was really happy, and we made our days. I maybe came on with a bit too much swagger. But hey.
You, swagger?
Me?
Never. Anybody else?
Do you know if you ask another question, we can't go to the bar? There we go, Diana.
Two questions. One question. Can I ask about the camera movement? You said that it felt, I don't think it felt slow, maybe because you already know it. But you managed, despite having kind of a fast-paced show, have a lot of like slow movement and have a lot of like long shots that kind of what develops throughout. And how did you manage to kind of make them believe in those shots and not just do coverage?
Well, you have a director who believes in what we're doing, and an editor Tony Kearns, who kind of honoured. You have a strong director and an editor who does what the director asks them to do, and an editor who's working for the director, not for the coverage people. So many.
Well,
we
also
went.
Tony's a legend.
Sorry?
I didn't know Tony was the editor.
Oh yeah, well,
He's great.
yeah, and well, exactly, and so. It's about having the right team, and then you get certain shows where they're going to make the show in the edit, and so all you're doing is providing them with wide shot, close up. I was about to say wide shot, close up, but that's how I grew up in film. Move on.
But I mean, that's much more common in the kind of showrunner-led world of TV now, whereas this is a 4-part, limited series with one director. It's a different, it's a different kind of thing where those rules don't necessarily apply, right?
Yes, and I think you spotted that. You probably hit the nail on the head there. That it is. It's not the great, which has great dialogue and great this and great that, and you've been
And great coverage.
and great coverage. I mean, you've been there. We've watched it, and it works really well for that show.
But my God, you spend a long time filming Mal's opening and closing.
He did the great. He knows. But yeah, and as a model, it works really well for what they want.
Yeah.
And we weren't really modelling anything here. And this is maybe one of the interesting things. Maybe I'm blowing my own sort of trumpet here. Is that having somebody with a more filmy background coming into this, it brings another perspective into it. I brought my own workflows in. I brought my own approach. The production company wasn't particularly keen on having graded rushes, and I absolutely insisted on it.
So how did that actually work then? So Keir was actually doing them while you were shooting?
Yeah. He was balancing. The LUT was so perfect. The LUT was a strong LUT, and it worked really well, and it was a very flexible LUT. And so Keir was doing a lot of balancing. I was lighting to the LUT.
Because just to interrupt, because usually in my experience, the expense of having that person on set is one thing that gets cut quite often, and that dailies grading happens at the post company by some lesser, assistant to the colorist. Or
It was one of the things I kind of said.
Right, so
I think this is really important.
Okay.
And Kerr was very, he was also the lab.
Yeah.
He made it work.
Well, I think from a QC point of view, it's great to have somebody looking at stuff right then and there, so you're not get.
And that you kind of sell it along that line, saying
It's more expensive to have a fuck up.
I want somebody. A DIT is there not to do transfers. A DIT is there to do quality control whilst we're shooting. Make sure the exposures are right.
And that there's nothing wrong with the footage.
Check for focus. Somebody's got to be keeping an eye on it because we're not going back. And if we don't get it, it's that one day where we don't get it, and you only find out tomorrow. It's cost you as much as it's going to cost to have him
Here
for the whole thing. So it's it's fighting those battles very, very early on. So even now, at interview stage, I'd like to have a chat after the interview if I can see them showing any interest on that rare occasion. I will then say, can I have a chat with the producer, and we'll ask and just say, this is how I really like to work, and see whether there's any pushback. Silence.
Well, I think
Yeah.
I'm going to say
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Angus. And,
Thank you very much, Jake.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much, you guys.
And thank you, everybody, for coming.